And a very good evening to you. I am Lisa Lord, and my special guest is the project coordinator at the National Housing Corporation, Mr. Roger Ward. Mr. Ward, thank you so much for joining us on your program.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
No, the NHC is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, a milestone anniversary. I want to begin by looking at the history of the corporation and why it was even formed to begin with.
Well, to understand the history of the corporation, we have to go a bit further than 50 years. It all started back in the 1930s with the establishment of the Housing Board. And the Housing Board was created because of an urban drift. There was a failure of the sugar industry back in the 1930s, and people started to move to urban centers. And the Housing Board was established to provide housing for those people. Areas of the Pine and Clinkets and St. Lucie were the first couple of areas that were established. However, it wasn't very successful, and it led to, after the riots of 1937, there were a couple of commissions, the Moyne Commission and so on, that spoke to the reasons for the riot, lack of proper housing. So it led to the establishment of the Housing Authority back in 1958. The Housing Authority moved ahead after Hurricane Janet again. Hurricane Janet became a catalyst for public housing. And they started about establishing public housing, especially rental public housing. And that's where you had large estates such as Deacons, Eden Lodge, extensions to the Pine, Grisettes, Gall Hill, Ellerton. You had all of these coming about. Thereafter, the Urban Development Corporation was established because you had middle-income families expecting and needing housing, and they started to develop areas at Husbands and Wanstead and West Terrace. That led again to the establishment in 1973 of the National Housing Corporation, and the work of those two agencies came together to form what is now the National Housing Corporation in 1973. This year we are celebrating 50 years of service to the people of Barbados. I dare say we may not have always gotten it right, but we have gone a long way in helping to house the most vulnerable persons in this society. We have done projects at areas all across the island. I don't think there's a parish that we have not touched. We have done well over 4,400 rental houses across this island, and using those to house over 12,000 families over that period. We have established loan schemes, the General Workers Loan Scheme, what morphed into the Public Officers Housing Loan Fund, started here at National Housing Corporation. That morphed into the mortgage finance, and we have provided persons who needed to gain access to financing. We've provided loans to the extent of well over $70 million over the years through the National Housing Corporation and through the Public Workers Housing Loan Fund. So the National Housing Corporation really, over the period of time, has been busy trying to provide public housing and to provide the means of public housing.
Mr. Ward, you would have touched on some of the housing estates. Let's look at the estates. As you said, you started with the Pine and in Clinkets in St. Lucie.
The Pine is the oldest housing development, oldest housing estate in Barbados. It was started way back in 1948 under the Housing Board. There are 820 units at the Pine. In addition to that, there are well over 300 service lots at the Pine. it encompasses perhaps 80 to 100 acres of land. It is heavily dense. Um, we are currently exploring an opportunity to reduce that density by establishing a development at Lower Burnie to thin the pine, as it were, and to look perhaps at some urban redevelopment in that area. Dickens Estate was established that provided 325 housing units. There are also approximately 70 to 80 lots at Dickens as well. So we have always, when we did developments, old developments in those days, in addition to the units, we also provided lots for persons who would want to build their own homes. And this is where, again, you twin the sites and services with the provision of loans through the General Workers Loan Fund and the Public Workers Housing Loan Fund and stuff like that. In addition, there are other developments in that entire Deacons Jenkins estate. There's Ferniehurst, which consists of 154 units. There's Rosemont, consisting 69 units. Up the hill from there, you have Eden Lodge, 325 units. Grisette's, 240 units. St. Stephen's, 39 units. And you go even further north from there, and you get Haynesville Estate, which consists of 320 units. You go a little further north again, Bagatelle. That's perhaps one of the older housing estates as well, that consists mainly of duplex and single houses. There are approximately 35 houses there in the old estate, but then recently, well, when I say recently, as recent as the early 80s, and we did another 20 units there. In addition to that, there are units at Maynard's, 59 units there. There's another old estate at Belle Plaine, where 51 units were constructed way back in the early 1950s. I think that predated Hurricane Janet. A lot of those units, you would imagine, in the older estates would have been built without indoor plumbing in those days. We've gone back and we've added indoor plumbing to most of these estates. So we have kept pace with modern amenities, so to speak, where a lot of the older estates are concerned.
And I'm going to come back to the modern amenities a little later. In March 2008, the government introduced the 20-year divestment program, and this permitted the free transfer of ownership of housing units to tenants who had been residing in their units for a period of 20 or more years. How has that program been going?
Thus far, 3,074 persons have qualified under that program. To date, we have only been able to convey approximately 500 of those units. However, those persons who have qualified, they're not now paying rent. It is just that we've been unable to convey those units. And there's a reason for that. Over the years, a lot of tenants have made additions to the units, and it has prevented us from receiving planning permission to subdivide those units, because a lot of the additions that were made were illegally done. Therefore, government has had to look at a means of transferring these units to people while taking into consideration all of the regulatory concerns are there. We are at a stage now where we are considering convening through an act of Parliament so as not to infringe on the planning authorities. We have recently prepared a cabinet paper, which is due to go to cabinet within the next couple of weeks, and we hope thereafter for the matter to go to Parliament, and once it goes through Parliament, we should be able to convey the rest of those units. You would note that takes care of approximately 70% of the units owned by the National Housing Corporation. And you may wonder then what is going to happen to persons who would require properties or units in the, especially low-income persons, in the near future. Well, the National Housing Corporation is in the process of trying to replenish some of these units. You would have seen that within the last 2 weeks we opened the most recent housing development, that of the Allens Court.
Your 50th.
My 50th, in the 50th year of our existence. And there are other projects planned. There's one at Oxnard's Haynesville, a duplex set of units planned there. There's also one at St. Bart's planned in Pilgrim Place. And the two of these together will provide at least 90 units over the next year or so. So the corporation is actively pursuing replenishing what they are divesting. We may not be able to do it as fast as the units are leaving us. We may not be able to replace as fast as units leave. But certainly there are other avenues that we are pursuing where affordable income housing is concerned. And as we continue to speak, I will go into some of those.
No, looking at places like the Pine, Deacons, etc., these are very old housing estates. The infrastructure has also failed over time. We have heard about the electrical faults in some of these units, and I know that NHC has an electrical upgrade program.
NHC is currently upgrading approximately 3,000 of the 4,400 units. We started this project back in 2019, and thus far we've spent approximately $17 million in completing 2,100 of these units across all estates. Our major challenge has been having the Barbados Light and Power keep pace with the work we are doing. Because of supply chain issues, the Barbados Light and Power has a shortage of meters, and that has caused a delay in the transitioning of the old system to the new. But I want to reassure all tenants and the public at large that we have been engaging with the Barbados Light and Power, and they've recently expressed to us that they should be able to go a long way in completing most of the upgrades that we have already completed in the various estates. In addition to our electrical work, the sewage infrastructure to a lot of these properties is dated. I would want to add that these systems were not designed to accommodate the numbers that currently occupy these units. When these systems were designed and built, most of these units house 3 or 4 persons. Today, a large sector or a large segment of the units, especially in the older estates like the Pine and Haynesville and Belle Plaine, a lot of these units carry more than 10 persons. And you would imagine that the capacity of the systems which were not designed to accommodate that. So the corporation over the last 3 to 4 years have been refurbishing a lot of those systems and upgrading them. We've changed out a lot of the old carbon pitch piping to modern pipes. We have dislodged more than 400 of the sewage wells and systems and increased their capacity by sinking them further. But this, well, it seems not extensive. It is very expensive, it is time consuming, but it is something that has to be done. And the corporation over the last 4 years, 3 years really, has been undertaking this work. We have spent perhaps about $9.5 million in refurbishing the sewage system across the island where these units are concerned.
NHC also had an issue with a number of uncovered wells.
That is true, and we have responded to that by replacing a lot of the broken and damaged well covers across the island. It's a program that is continuing. Unfortunately, there was an incident at the Pine where a young man fell and lost his life. And our sympathies really go out to the family and the community where that happened. But the community can be rest assured that the corporation is responding to all of those issues. We are mindful to carry out our inspections to ensure that when we clean and uncover those wells, that new capping is put in place and new well covers are put in place, ones that will not perhaps crumble if traversed across.
The NHC tends to target low and middle income persons. Let's look at the price range of some of your units. This is rental units, of course.
The National Housing Corporation really has not raised rents for the last 34 years. The last time we had a rent increase was in 1989. So most people who occupy the older units, those units at the Pine and Haynesville and Dickens, their average rent is still between $40, $45, and $60, depending on the... A week. Depending on whether it is a 2 or 3 bedroom home. The more recently built units would be priced a little higher, but yet they're still way below the market rates. The most recent development here at Alleyne's Court, those are only $150 a week, still below $700 a month, and they carry all of the modern amenities. Alleyne's Court is hooked directly up to the Bridgetown Sewage Project. They carry 220 installation of electricity. They carry natural gas, and they're hooked up to all of the media utilities. They have internet and so on.
Those are the rental units. In terms of the price ranges now for the actual houses,
NHC priced and deliver houses to the public of Barbados in various ranges. We have the affordable income homes where we try to keep properties under $200,000. The most recent ones that we would have constructed would be the Todds and the Rice's development, where persons were able to access a 3-bedroom home at around $180,000, inclusive of the land. There is also a middle income component to what NHC does. And those, again, those homes are priced between 250,000 to 350,000. We always try to cater to what the market can carry and what the persons who are applying to us can afford. The public sector of Barbados, meaning public officers, have for the large part been unable to access housing. The NHC has been trying desperately to respond to that market. Middle level public officers earning between 3,500 up to $5,500. Those are the ones that we target through our middle income housing program. But it is not exclusionary. We do not exclude people from the private sector. So therefore, anyone who requires housing in that segment of the market, we try to respond. There are projects at Durance, Westhurst Durance, currently going on. There's a new project that we have started at Brighton in St. George. There's also the project at Chancery Lane, which is a joint venture arrangement between the National Housing Corporation and Preconco Limited, where 267 houses are being built, priced between 270,000 and 370,000. These are 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, and 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom houses, ranging in size from around 900 to 1,100 square feet. This is at Atlantic Breeze. There are other projects that the corporation has in the pipeline that will be rolled out pretty early in the new year. There are going to be projects at Vineyard in St. Philip, where we are going to develop 63 acres of land there to provide approximately 500 houses. These primarily will go towards affordable income families. There's also another project coming to Graham Hall in Christchurch, again, where 90 middle-income homes will be provided. The government of Barbados has announced the 10,000 house program. NHC is integral to that, to the success of that program, and we are currently examining and reviewing areas across the island that will go into that housing development. We have recently looked at land in St. George. At there's an area that we hope to acquire at Draxhall Greens, and there's also another area at Fairview in St. George that we are looking at as well. There's an area at Ebenezer in St. Philip that we are looking at. And these are areas that once we go through the process of acquisition, we are going to move pretty swiftly to bring onto the market. We are examining joint venture arrangements with various small, medium, and large developers, because NHC may not be building, but we can have it done for us. And the beauty about that is that NHC can do the majority of the planning work, which reduces the costs. We can do the designs, we can undertake the surveying. So therefore, that helps to keep the costs at a reasonable rate, so that the people that we are targeting can actually benefit.
And I'm hearing about all of these projects in the pipeline and those about to come on stream, but you have 18,000 applicants in a backlog.
And this is the exact reason why we have to fast track the majority of all of these projects, not the majority, all of these projects. There are different ways that we are going to address that 18,000 backlog. Not everyone will be able to qualify for a mortgage. There are people who apply to us who earn under $3,000 a month, and the market suggests that those who earn under 3,000 might not be able to qualify for a mortgage immediately. Hence, we have looked and we have formulated a paper on rent to own. This is to go to cabinet, and once that policy is approved by cabinet and enunciated, that will help to assist those persons who cannot access a mortgage. Rent to own basically is a system where a person pays based on their income. So therefore, if that individual earns under $3,000, let me give you a typical example. If a person earns $2,500 a month, net of regulatory requirements, and they're placed into the rent to own program, that person will actually only pay 700, a maximum of $750 a month. That person will build equity from the moment they start to pay. 70% of whatever payment they make goes towards the actual purchase of the house. So over time, they begin to build equity, they reduce the costs, and at some point, they may be able then to proceed onto a mortgage.
But the NHC always had a rent-to-own program in place.
But it was limited. It was very limited. It wasn't extended beyond the Greens and Early Heights development. So what the administration has determined is that to respond to those persons who are below a certain income level, the rent-to-own concept must be expanded and become inclusive of those persons.
Mr. Ward, still a lot more to discuss. Stay with us. You're watching One on One.
As Barbadians prepare for the Atlantic hurricane season, here is some information about shelters. Shelters are listed in two categories. A Category 1 shelter may be used during a hurricane or other hazard event, while Category 2 shelters may be used if they are still in a reasonable condition after a hazard event or disaster. Persons are advised to make their way to shelters well in advance of a storm's arrival.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion with the project coordinator at the National Housing Corporation, Mr. Roger Ward. Mr. Ward, in the first half, we dealt with quite a bit, including your housing estates and the rent to charge, etc. However, you still have a high percentage of persons who are delinquent in paying those rents despite how reasonable they are.
The NHC has always been faced with that dilemma. There are persons who think that because they are renting from government, that they need not honor their responsibilities. But I would want to put it this way. A question was asked from biblical times, if you are your brother's keeper. We are our brother's keepers. And if we want to ensure that our siblings and our children continue to benefit from public housing, persons will have to honor their responsibilities to the National Housing Corporation. We cannot continue to allow people to occupy our units and not pay their rents. after they've asked us to undertake upgrades and repairs and so on. And we are going to be pretty aggressive in trying to collect our monies. There are people who obviously, because of their circumstances, that they may not be able to pay. Those are not the persons we are targeting. We will target those who are gainfully employed, who have incomes, and who bluntly refuse to honor the commitment to the National Housing Corporation. Currently, the arrears across our estate stand at approximately $11 million. We cannot allow that sum to continue to grow. We cannot allow persons to continue to ignore their responsibilities to the corporation. And therefore, we starting the middle of this month, we are undertaking some social surveys across our estates. We are going to be undertaking means testing to determine those who can pay, but those who bluntly refuse to pay.
You said $11 million, but I just want you to break that down. How many of those tenants, in terms of, give me the number.
We currently have approximately 1,200 active rental accounts, given that out of the 4,400 units, we are divesting 3,000 of those. And out of those 1,200 accounts, approximately 50% of the persons are in arrears.
So half.
So half. There are persons who, because of what they went through during COVID, have not recovered to the extent that they would have wanted to. And we understand that. But yet, there are those who even prior to COVID, and who since COVID, have bluntly refused to pay the corporation. We cannot allow that to continue. We will not allow it to continue. So we're putting people on guard that they ought to pay their rents.
Shouldn't the corporation take some of the blame as well? Because we see some stories sometimes where persons owe for 10 years. Now, if you don't pay for 6, how are you going to pay for 5? Then how are you going to pay for 10? So you are allowing persons in these situations sometimes.
The corporation must take some responsibilities, yes. But Lisa, you have to understand that NHC is a social agency. Over the years, we have tried to work with tenants to get them to pay. Persons have had various difficulties in paying, and we understand that. However, we cannot, at this stage, continue to allow it because the NHC will not be getting funding from central government in the future. And therefore, what was tolerated previously cannot now be tolerated and will not be tolerated. There are persons out there, as I said before, who we understand because of their situations might not be able to honor all of their obligations to the National Housing Corporation. But there are agencies within government that these people can go to where they can get assistance, and they ought to do so. But we will begin, as I said, by trying to identify those persons who are vulnerable and who genuinely cannot pay. The others who we deem are in a position to pay will have to honor their commitments to the National Housing Corporation.
In the first half, we spoke about the massive backlog you have of applicants. So we're dealing about 18,000 persons. There has been a concern over the years about how the NHC goes about choosing who gets a house. It is not on a first come, first served basis. We've heard instances where persons have applied maybe just 2 years ago they get a house. Somebody had an application in 25 years ago and they're still waiting.
The NHC, with all good intent, will never be able to accommodate all those who come to it. There are persons, yes, who would say, but applicant X came after me and got a house. What is the circumstances behind applicant X getting that house? There are persons who have become disenfranchised. There are persons out there who are living in their cars. There are persons who are living in dilapidated conditions. So there are a whole lot of considerations that the corporation takes into into account when it decides to present someone to the board for approval of a house. So yes, there are people who may be more recent than some who would get a solution from the corporation, but it is because of their circumstance. Remember, as I said, NHC is a social agency and we must respond to those who are more desperate and those who are more vulnerable. What we are trying to do with our 10,000 house program is trying to provide more houses so that we can respond to more of those who feel aggrieved by not being able to access housing at the rate or at the pace that they would have wanted. But I urge them to be patient with us. Our program is going to become very intense over the next year and a half, and we are going to be responding to a whole lot more people than we've been able to over the last couple of years. But there are criteria in place for selecting persons. As I said, circumstances, background comes into play.
I'm glad you mentioned criteria and background because NHC has faced some criticism over the years about how you go about selecting your contractors. Some homeowners say that they have gotten some very shoddy work over the years.
And we cannot shy away from that. Yes, that has happened, but the NHC has responded to that by over the last 6 months, we have put out several tenders for expression of interest for contractors to apply to us and to register with us. We are doing our due diligence on these contractors so as to ensure that what happened in the past does not reoccur. We have shortlisted quite a few contractors, and those have been sent to our parent ministry for approval and ratification. We are quite confident that those who applied and whom we have carried out our due diligence on would be capable of undertaking the work. But NHC equally will have to step up how it monitors its projects in the future. And therefore, we are going to be putting our technical team into the field where they will do the monitoring and control aspect of the project, and where contractors fall down, we'll be able on the spot to address those issues. So yes, Lisa, we have had issues with contractors in the past, and I dare say we may continue to have issues with some contractors, but we are going to be monitoring our projects a whole lot more than we have in the past. NHC must take some responsibility, and therefore we are putting our mechanisms in place to respond to the issues raised by the public.
And since we're on the topic of contractors, in terms of the projects coming in on time and on budget, are you still maintaining that?
The current supply chain issue is having an effect on projects in a negative way because of the delays in supply. It can have a negative impact on project in terms of costs. However, through our planning and our forward planning, we are trying to address issues like that. It is not the intention of the corporation to allow projects and project costs to escalate. This would be counterproductive to what we're trying to do in providing affordable housing for the public. So therefore, in our project management programs and so on, we're trying to establish the framework where costings are done effectively, where timing is done effectively, and if we follow the precepts of project management and planning, contractors will be able to plan at which stage they do their ordering, so as to ensure that adequate time is placed on their procurement. And because the whole idea is not to allow escalation in cost of projects. The minute we allow escalation in cost of projects, then we do not get to the people that we are trying to cater to. So our project management has to be on point. Our planning has to be on point.
Time is money.
Time is money.
NHC is also involved in several relocation exercises. We have the residents from Whitehill in St. Andrew, where there's been terrible land slippage, as well as the squatters in Rock Hall, Christchurch, near the airport. Where are we with those relocation exercises?
We have completed perhaps 9 out of the 14 houses to be relocated from Whitehill to Farmers. There are currently 4 under construction at Farmers to accommodate those persons from Whitehill. So that's going pretty well. The Rock Hall relocation project was badly affected by the COVID situation, and then the Hurricane Elsa situation, where we had to divert the workers from that project towards the Hurricane Elsa rehabilitation. However, we have recommenced work on the Rock Hall relocation. To date, we have relocated 15 of the 106 persons to be relocated. There are another 22 houses currently under construction at Parshland Extension. The vast majority, though, of the persons will be relocated to 2 sites at Dodds North and Dodds South. If you pass next to the prison, you would see that there is infrastructural work being done there. This is Dodds North. Approximately 60 of the remaining 80 houses at Rock Hall to be relocated will be sited there. Work on those houses will commence very shortly. Dodds South, we are in the process of doing our planning work there, where another 25 persons are to be relocated. So the relocation from Rock Hall is very much within our eyes. As I said, it was delayed quite a bit by the COVID situation, but we're trying to get back on track with that now. The sites have been identified, the persons have been identified, and we're working towards the actual construction to get those people out. The Whitehill situation, that is pretty advanced, and I would think that by mid next year we should be completed with the Whitehill relocation.
You mentioned Hurricane Elsa. Now, as far as I could see, about 1,700 homes were damaged or destroyed during the passage of Hurricane Elsa in July 2021. The majority of those homes have been repaired or rebuilt, but some are still outstanding. Where are we in terms of that upgrade project? Restoration project, sorry.
The Hurricane Elsa restoration project has progressed very smoothly to date. We've completed approximately 90% of the houses to date. Well, I've started approximately 90% of the houses today. NHC has responsibility for 1,500 of that 1,700 houses. We have completed repairs to more than 700 houses. There are over 300 houses that have been rebuilt to date. What we are concentrating on now are those persons who might have had some difficulty with their landlords in getting the house replaced on the actual site, the original site. We are trying to negotiate with some of those landlords to allow the rebuild of the house. In some instances, we are trying to provide new sites for these persons. But by and large, the Hurricane Elsa program has progressed quite significantly. As I said, we've completed more than 80% of the houses to date. We've spent well over $60 million over the last 2 years on that program. We have drawn down heavily from the catastrophe fund for that project, and we hope to have that project completed by the end of March next year.
Speaking of hope, we've heard a lot about home ownership providing energy, or Hope Inc. over the last few years, which is supposed to be providing energy efficient, hurricane resilient homes for first time home buyers. So, and Hope is fully owned by government. Let's look at Hope holistically.
Hope is a fully owned SOE of government, but functions as a commercial enterprise. Therefore, it does not draw any of its expenditure from the consolidated fund or from central government. That's the whole concept behind Hope. There are certain partnerships that will be formed between the National Housing Corporation and Hope, especially where the Juravilla project is concerned. By the Juravilla project, I'm referring to a project where the government of Barbados has signed an agreement with the government of Ghana for the provision of hardwood houses out of Ghana. NHC will partner with Hope in the construction and provision of those houses. Currently, the corporation, we are building out 30 foundations at River Crescent for the Hope, where 30 houses will be constructed by them for us. There are another 40 houses to be built at Concordia Gardens, which is the project opposite the site opposite the prison. But by and large, the majority of the houses under the Juravilla program will be constructed at Hanson, which is to the east of Lower Burney. We currently have an application in with the planning department for the development of that site. 300 houses, approximately 300 houses are to be built there. The entire Juravilla project is to provide approximately 2,000 hardwood houses over the next 5 years to the government of Barbados. And they will be constructed at various locations across the island. If one were to visit the site at Clifton in St. Philip, you would see the first 15 of those houses nearing completion. And by year end, another 2030 should be nearing completion at River Crescent. But there will be synergies and partnerships between the National Housing Corporation and Hope. The whole idea is to utilize photovoltaic energy within these houses to assist in paying for the land component, and this is one of the concepts behind the whole establishment of Hope.
What's happening with the steel frame houses from China? We've been hearing about them for some time now.
Several of these steel frame houses have been erected at Lot 1, Haggett Hall. You would see that there are 3 quad houses, 12 units constructed there. Here at Solars Court in White Park Road, there are another 16 houses being constructed there. But the majority of the steel frame houses are being constructed at Bullins in St. James. They're at the foundation stage now with those ones. And then there are individual houses scattered across the island. Initially, the steel frame houses were procured as a response to Hurricane Elsa.
Yeah.
However, they took a while to get here, and we could not delay the Hurricane Elsa program until those houses got here. So most of the houses now will go towards affordable income families, similar to those who were housed at Anne's Court.
Mr. Ward, you have provided a good history of NHC over the last 50 years. The fact that you have completed quite a number of projects. You've had a lot of success. You've also had some failures along over the past 5 decades. However, is NHC, which is undergoing restructuring internally as well, still meeting its targets in providing housing for the people of Barbados?
NHC continues to strive to meet the targets of providing housing for the people of Barbados. However, the NHC that functioned 50 years ago to this point cannot be the NHC going forward. The expectations of the public of Barbados are different. The way we respond to those expectations will have to be different as well. NHC, over the last couple of months, we've been doing our internal self-examination. We've been challenged by the Prime Minister to reinvent ourselves, to think about the way we want to proceed in the future. The National Housing Corporation of the future must become more responsive. We must be faster in the delivery of our services. The NHC of the future cannot be one where persons rely on a visit every Tuesday or Thursday to determine whether they can get a home or not. The NHC of the future must be one which utilizes technology in a more efficient manner to respond to the public. We are going to be establishing our call center. That should be rolled out before the end of March. We are going to be more engaging with the public in terms of the products we are going to be presenting to them. We're going to be more engaging via the media in how we explain our projects and how we market our projects. There are going to be partnerships formed with other entities in providing service to the public of Barbados. And we hope that through our improved efficiencies internally, that we'll be able to deliver a better service to the public of Barbados.
Mr. Ward, thank you very much for sitting and speaking with us this evening. You can call you Mr. NHC yourself. You've been here for 42 years.
42 years, yes.
42 years. Congrats to you as well.
Thank you.
That was Mr. Roger Ward, the project coordinator here at the National Housing Corporation. I'm Lisa Lord. You are watching 101. Do have yourself a wonderful evening.